Thank you very much, Michael, for that introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you so much for inviting me to speak with you today. I truly appreciate the opportunity to tell you how my office works and how our organizations can actually help each other and complement one another. Donc, un grand merci de m'avoir invité à m'adresser à vous ce soir. Je tiens à vous remercier surtout pour la...
Thank you for inviting me here tonight. I truly appreciate the greeting you gave me, and I'm very pleased to speak about the working of my office and how other organizations and mine can help each other and complement each other.
Have always shared common goals. You know, we both have a duty to serve in the public interest. And we both promote the quality and accountability of public services. But now, for the first time, my office's mandate for oversight and complaints resolution actually extends right into the bodies that most of you work for, school boards. So I understand if some of you might have some trepidation about inviting the Ombudsman to your meeting. And I assure you I am not here to judge or investigate tonight. And if anything, I'm the one who should be concerned. I might have to worry about the grade you might give me after I speak tonight. But all kidding aside, let me first say that I want to offer my thanks and appreciation for what you do as teachers. As the parent of a teenager, I am grateful and indebted to the teachers who help guide my daughter every day in building the skills that she needs to take on the world. And quite frankly, if it had not been for the devotion and commitment of Mrs. Hayes, my grade 10 math teacher, who gave me the extra help and attention I needed, I may not be here tonight speaking to you as Ontario Ombudsman. So, teachers know better than anyone that learning is not something that ends when you leave school. It's a lifelong process. And as someone who is just 2 months into a new job, I can attest to that. Not only have I been learning the ropes at my new office, I've also made it a priority to get out there, come to events like this one as often as possible to meet and educate stakeholders in our new area of jurisdiction. Education, communication, and relationship building are at the very heart of what we do. And indeed, that's another thing we have in common with teachers. Now, without getting too pedagogical, what I'd like to do today is give you a quick primer on what it is an ombudsman does and what the office stands for. And then I'd like to discuss how that applies to our work with school boards. As well, I'd like to share with you some of the lessons that we've learned along the way. And believe me, we're constantly learning. So, Ombudsman 101. A little history lesson first. So the role of ombudsman goes back 200 years now to 1809 when Sweden created the first parliamentary ombudsman. And the word ombudsman is Swedish. It means citizen's representative. In other words, somebody who's independent of government, who hears public concerns and raises them with those in power. And every province in Canada, except for Prince Edward Island, has a provincial ombudsman. And most of us, including Ontario, have been given oversight over boards of education, while Quebec and Manitoba are considering the same thing. So our office is independent of government and we are impartial. That means we don't advocate for complainants and we don't defend the bodies that we oversee. We are not judges or enforcers. We simply review the facts and we recommend solutions. So ours is an oversight role that does include investigative powers, but the bulk of our work involves resolving issues at the lowest level possible, and there usually is not a need for a formal investigation. So our role is not to name, blame, and shame. It's to identify administrative problems and ultimately improve governance. Now, we sometimes describe our work as being the operator in a game of broken telephone, and I'm sure as teachers, many of you have had an experience like that. Now, our staff are experts in navigating bureaucracy and promoting fairness. They're also expert listeners with years of experience in helping frustrated people who have been through the bureaucratic mill. When a complicated problem arises, we operate using Occam's razor and we look for simple, practical solutions. We handle more than 23,000 complaints every year with less than 100 people. Our mandate has recently doubled, so you can imagine how busy we are. With the addition of municipalities, universities, and school boards, we've had to almost double our staff, and we're in the process of doing that. So we have to be nimble and we have to be efficient. And we do this through a system of teams. These teams triage complaints to ensure that they're dealt with as quickly as possible. And again, most of our complaints are resolved informally, through a few phone calls or by connecting people with the right officials to handle their problems. Only if the issue cannot be informally resolved will it be escalated to an investigation. Now, occasionally, if we notice a trend in complaints or significant administrative problems affecting large numbers of people, we can launch a systemic investigation. Now, that's a large-scale field investigation that involves exhaustive evidence gathering and publishing a report. And those are the cases you may have heard about, because they generally result in significant changes in government administration. For example, the Ministry of Education accepted all 113 recommendations in our office's 2014 report on the monitoring of unlicensed daycares. So we're always on the lookout for these broad systemic issues, and we will continue to conduct those types of investigations. In fact, I announced just last week a systemic investigation into procurement practices at the City of Brampton, and this will be our first systemic investigation of a municipality. But the bulk of our work, as I said, is always informal, proactive, and usually behind the scenes. So we're there to make sure that mechanisms work effectively and step in if they fail. Another example from the education sector is when the government appointed supervisors for certain school boards, which happened 3 or 4 times in the past 8 years. Now, this was before our mandate officially included school boards, but when the province took over these boards temporarily, it meant that our office could take complaints about them. And we did. However, in every case, we were able to refer the complaints to the supervisors in question, and we followed up to make sure that they were resolved satisfactorily. Now, of course, we have had jurisdiction over school boards for 9 months now, almost a full school year. We have received just over 500 complaints since then, and I'm happy to say that so far, we've not needed to launch a formal investigation. Furthermore, we've received excellent cooperation from most of the boards that we've dealt with so far, and that's allowed us to resolve quite a few difficult issues. In most cases, we were able to help people by referring them to the right people at the local level, or by having our staff make informal inquiries with board officials. A substantial proportion of cases are dealt with simply by our staff providing information and referrals, and that happens about 35% of the time. Now, the topics of complaints are about what you would expect. At the start of the year, we had quite a few complaints about busing. For example, we looked into a case where a 4-year-old boy was dropped off at the wrong bus stop, and his family didn't know where he was for about 45 minutes. So fortunately, he was returned safely by a Good Samaritan to his school. Still, one of our investigators made informal inquiries with the Transportation Consortium and found out that their system failed because of a driver's error. As a result of our suggestions, the consortium committed to improving its incident reporting procedures and its driver training. As far as we're aware, there have been no further incidents. As this case demonstrates, not all cases that we resolve are simple, but if the lines of communication are open with the relevant officials, we can achieve constructive solutions that help avert further complaints. Now, in many cases, our intervention can reinforce the fact that the systems in place are working, or that a school board has done everything it can to provide the best service possible. In one recent example, parents complained to our office after the school board decided to move their child's bus stop 300 meters to a busier intersection. But our staff reviewed the board's transportation policy and how the safety of this new bus stop was assessed. And the complaint was closed once that we confirmed that the board had conducted a site visit at the stop and had responded to all of the parents' concerns. In another case, parents complained that not enough was being done to accommodate their child's severe allergies to nuts and dairy. Our staff reviewed the policies in place at the school and the relevant legislation. And we determined that the school had in fact done everything reasonably possible to restrict allergens in the school and minimize risks to the child. Not surprisingly, as the school year progressed, the 2 most common topic of complaints had been staff, including school board officials, directors of education, principals and teachers, and also special education. About 25 of the complaints about staff related directly to teachers. And of course, we do not regulate the teaching profession. That's your job at the College of Teachers. But if we do receive a complaint about a teacher's conduct, we will refer the complaint accordingly. either to the appropriate officials at the school or board officials or to the college directly. Now, for special education, those complaints cover everything from individual education plans to issues at the various review committees to general complaints about a lack of resources. Again, wherever possible, we help connect people with the right mechanism to be heard, and we are there to step in as a last resort if they've tried everything and hit a brick wall. However, some broad issues of government policy, whether it's how much is spent on education or special education, or what is taught in the sex ed curriculum, are not within the Ombudsman's traditional role. Governments are elected to set policy, and an Ombudsman's role is not to agree or disagree with it, but simply review the administration and execution of actions and ensure that they're carried out fairly. Now, in this area, as I'm sure you can appreciate, a little education goes a long way. We often hear from people who are frustrated and angry about government or school board decisions, and we explain to them that our role is not to overturn or change those decisions, but rather to examine their impact, and if warranted, we can make recommendations to improve fairness and accountability. Now, by the same token, because we hear from so many people on a daily basis, our office is uniquely positioned to alert the relevant authorities to simmering problems before they boil over. If we spot problems that appear to be systemic across several school boards or a region or even around the province, we will be able to tackle them. And here's something for all stakeholders in the broader public sector to remember. If we find that the issue also relates to provincial government bodies, we have the ability to go there too. So if and when we do launch a formal investigation of a school board, whether it involves an individual problem or a systemic one, we will follow the same tried and true procedures that we've used in the province of Ontario for over 40 years. The Director of Education or the Chair of the Board, depending on the situation, will receive formal notice, just as provincial bodies do. And our investigations are conducted in private, but for those involved, we will ensure that there are no surprises. The organizations under investigation always have the chance to provide input during the investigation and to respond to our findings before they are published. Now, this is part of our commitment to procedural fairness, which I believe we must apply in our own operations as much as within the investigations that we do. Frankly, we're committed to walking the talk on procedural fairness. So the parties to an investigation are entitled to know what we're looking into and have ample opportunity to have their input considered and finally know the reasoning behind our conclusions. As I said at the outset, our emphasis on education includes educating ourselves. Even though we have had oversight of the Ministry of Education for 40 years, we appreciate that we have a lot to learn about the working of school boards. So I wanted to give you an idea of how we prepared for this responsibility and how we're still working to learn from stakeholders like you. First of all, we conducted a survey of all school boards over a year ago to gather information about their policies and complaint procedures and things like codes of conduct, all of which we strongly encourage at the local level. And we have a dedicated team of staff who handle school board complaints, and they have all had special training on the Education Act, amongst other things. Well, our senior team traveled the province last year to attend roundtables with representatives from school boards and municipalities in every region, and to hear their concerns about how we would execute our new mandate. Now, one of our aims is to have face-to-face meetings with the leadership of every school board in the province. Now, obviously, it'll take more than a year to meet them all, but we have already met with quite a few, including the big district boards in Toronto, Ottawa, and York region, the Durham Catholic Board, and even the Aurore Boreal Catholic Board in the north. We have also spoken at several events held by associations of public, Catholic, and French language boards, involving trustees, directors of education, business officials, and human resource officials. And we also created a webinar to explain our processes to school board officials, which had an excellent turnout. That was my first day on the job. And I encourage any of you who have questions about how we work to check it out on the website. Donc, nous avons aussi créé un webinaire pour expliquer.
We also created a webinar to explain our processes to the school board officials, And it was a success. You can see it on our website. Unfortunately, it is only in English right now, but we are working on a French version, which will be available soon.
Conferences of People for Education and its French counterpart, as well as numerous other engagements with parent councils and associations. And of course, we haven't forgotten the teachers. Members of our executive team addressed the Elementary Teachers Federation in February, and I will be speaking at the Secondary School Teachers Conference in August in Ottawa. So teachers are an important partner for us in working to ensure accountability and transparency in the school sector. And I want to encourage you to keep the lines of communication open with my office. Your input is most welcome, whether you have a complaint, an issue to flag, or simply a suggestion. Your frontline perspective is invaluable. As far as I'm concerned, the only thing better than resolving a complaint to everyone's satisfaction is preventing a complaint before it happens. So I hope my remarks have given you a good idea of the work that we've done in your world so far and the approach that I plan to take in the future. We are keeping the public and stakeholders informed by sharing information about our school board cases every month in our newsletter, which is available on our website, and by email. And we will have more details and statistics in our annual report, and that will be published later on this year. You know, I believe in finding win-win-win situations, and I'm convinced that our new mandate is one of them. So we're seeing increased public demand for accountability at the local and school board level. That's a win. We're seeing school boards working to ensure that they have clear complaint procedures and even discussing the establishment of their own ombudsman. That's a win. And the winners are the people we all serve, particularly the students in the schools. So everyone here has a role to play in improving school boards for Ontarians, and I look forward to working with you. So now I'm going to turn it over to the moderator. I understand that there may be some questions, and I'd be pleased to answer them. I just want to say thank you, merci beaucoup, et merci de votre attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for that. I'd just like to inform the participants that the meeting is being live streamed, and I would like to remind you of the process for questions this evening. Attendees are asked to submit the questions to the Ombudsman and later to the Chair of Council, Registrar, and the committee chairs' reports in advance of the questions, and we'll give you a minute or two after I complete this to get some questions in of the Ombudsman. And questions may be submitted in writing or online, and instructions for submitting your questions are posted and online and connected to the college's free Wi-Fi. It can be found on the posters at the back of the room. You can also drop off your questions in the boxes around the room. Okay, to streamline the proceedings and to ensure we can address as many questions as possible, these are the only two methods that will be available for posing questions. Note as well that the focus will be on questions that fall within the college's mandate. So if you have any questions, if you could submit those or put them in the box, and we'll put them up on the screen. And I see we have one already. So I'll read it. How is the Ombudsman approach to dealing with the new stakeholders in municipalities, universities, and school boards different from your approach dealing with the provincial government?
Well, thank you for that question. The short answer is that it is not. It is not any different. You know, we approach our work the same way. And really what I'm hoping to do is create the same trust and credibility with the new stakeholders as we have with the provincial bodies, departments that we've been working with for over 40 years. I think that we've established that trust and credibility by being fair in our processes, by keeping the lines of communication open, and by not just going out of our way to name, blame, and shame, but having that dialogue and providing constructive feedback. What I tell stakeholders, is that if we do an investigation in your organization, one of two things are going to happen, and this is the way that I recommend people look at it. If we come in and we find that there are no problems and that the complaint does not have merit, what you have is the benefit of an independent, credible third party validating your procedures, and that can be really good for morale in an organization. And so if everything's fine, then that's what we'll say. But if we do find problems, if we do find some maladministration, if we do find some issues of unfairness, and usually, and my past experience taught me this, and I'm sure it's the same in the provincial government, when complaints arise, when things happen, it's usually not the result of some malicious person doing something, a bad civil servant. It's usually the result of a policy or a procedure or a rule that's been created. And as a law professor I once knew used to say, rules are dumb. Rules don't know when they're being unfair, right? And some people don't have the discretion to go around that rule. They just have to apply it. And that leads to, some frustration with the people they're dealing with sometimes, and it's not their fault. So that's where the value of an ombudsman comes in, is we can come in, shine a light on that problem, and quite often the organizations know about that problem, but sometimes the people with the responsibility to change it don't have the resources, they don't have the mandate, they don't have the authority, they can't do anything about it. And sometimes there's no political will. But when the ombudsman comes in, writes a report, provides those recommendations, either they're acted on right away, or we make the report public, and then the organization says, okay, we have to fix it. So that's the value. So if we do go in and find problems, it's constructive feedback, and we're working with the organizations to come to sensible solutions. The recommendations that an ombudsman makes, they have to be feasible, right? And to be feasible, you have to know both sides of the story, and you have to get input from the organization. I used to say, it doesn't matter how thin you make the pancakes, there's always two sides. So you need to know the perspective of the complainant as well as the perspective of the entity. So, so that's the kind of relationship that I'm striving to build in our new sector with the new stakeholders. And so it's going to take some work, it's going to take some time, but that's why I'm committed to doing outreach. That's why I'm so grateful for opportunities like this to get the message out there that, it's not a witch hunt. We are here to provide a service to all Ontarians, but we're here to work with the stakeholders and help you improve your services.
Thank you. And we have another question. How do you promote your services so that they are accessible to the people who need them the most? How do you create public awareness about your services?
Well, that's another great question. You can do great work as an ombudsman, but if people don't know about it, you're not going to maximize your value, because not as many people will come forward with complaints, and not as many people will be aware of the results that you get. And then when you do make recommendations in the future, maybe, if you're a little bit off the radar, people won't feel the pressure, won't feel that moral suasion that really is the most important tool that ombuds have to be an agent of positive change. So communication is critical. I mean, the key focus of an ombudsman is relationship building and communications. So we avail ourselves of all the tools that we have, outreach, public speaking engagements, the internet, social media is very important. So any tool that we can use to get our message out there, and we leverage relationships. We don't just talk with individuals in a particular industry. We go deal with associations, and hopefully the associations will pass on the message to their members, and hope we can get more distance, more bang for our buck as we do outreach. Yeah.
This is going to be a long one. In a diverse society with citizens at varying levels of literacy and understanding of procedures and governing guidelines, i.e. deadlines, filling out particular forms, traversing bureaucratic structures, what has the Ombudsman's Office done to ensure equity of access and inclusive practice for all citizens who have concerns?
Another great question, and that's another way in which we add value. As I alluded to in my remarks earlier, some people just don't know where else to go, and they come to us, and we welcome that. And we have those contacts. Over 40 years, we've got those connections with the provincial government. We know where people should go. So if they can't navigate the bureaucracy, if they're not sure where to go, they often come to the Ombudsman's office. And it's a pleasure for us to facilitate that communication and get them where they need to go. So, yeah, I mean, bureaucracy, red tape, guidelines, they're very, very difficult. I'm a lawyer, I'm an ombudsman, I'm reasonably educated, and I went on a website the other day to renew my Nexus card, and I couldn't understand a thing. So some websites, some government institution forms and the paperwork are really complicated. They're really difficult. So sometimes you need some help, and so we're there to assist in that way anytime we can.
Do we have other questions? None other coming in? All right. I think that is very good questions that came up, and I'd like to thank Paul for being here this evening as a speaker, as a parliamentarian. I know that procedural correctness, how important that is for the effectiveness and efficiency of any organization. So thank you for that, and thank you for being here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much.